This is a video on algebra and the basics of inequalities. So firstly, the inequality symbols: greater than or equal to, less than, which looks like a bit of an L, so that might help you to remember which one's which, and less than or equal to. Next, a reminder of the different number systems that we're going to see mentioned when dealing with inequalities. There are natural numbers, which are positive whole numbers. There are integers, which are positive and negative whole numbers and zero. And there are real numbers. And real numbers are all positive and negative numbers and zero on the number line, including fractions and decimals. So all those parts in between the whole numbers are counted also. Now, depending on the number system that's been dealt with in the question, whether it's natural numbers, integers, or real numbers, and depending on the symbol that's used in the inequality in the question, we have different ways of marking our solutions on the number line. For natural numbers, no matter what the symbol, I'm always going to use a dot to mark the values that are acceptable for my solution. The only thing to watch out for in this case is that I should put an arrow at the end of my number line when I'm dealing with greater than or equal to, and 1 is the last value that I can mark if I've got a less than or equals to. I can't go down to 0 and I can't venture into the negative values because I'm looking at natural numbers indicated by n. Integers are also pretty straightforward in that I'll just use dots no matter what the symbol. And if I've got greater than symbols, I should have an arrow pointing to the right at the end of my number line to indicate that I can continue marking values to the right. And if I have less than or equal to, I should have an arrow pointing to the left at the end of my number line to indicate that I could continue to mark values to the left into the negative numbers. Real numbers are marked in a slightly different way. If I have greater than or less than, I don't want to include the actual value mentioned in the solution itself. I do, however, want to include everything directly next to it. So to indicate this in a number line, I will circle the value in the solution. Then to indicate that I want to include all values to the right in the case of greater than, or to the left in the case of less than, I'll draw a heavy line coming from this circle moving along the number line. In both cases, to indicate that I can continue going, I can put an arrow at the end of my heavy line. In the case of greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to, I do want to include the exact value given in the solution. To indicate that I want to include this value, I'll put a dot on the value, and then I'll proceed with a heavy line in the correct direction. So to the right for greater than or equal to, and for the left for less than or equal to, and of course finishing them with an arrow to indicate that I can keep going. There are a couple of things that it's important to be aware of when dealing with inequalities. Say, for example, I have an inequality minus x is greater than 5, and to solve this, I'd really like to have just an x on the left-hand side. Well, to do this, I can multiply my inequality by -1, and that'll change the signs on both sides. But it's important to note that in this scenario, the symbol for the inequality will also be reversed. So when I multiply this inequality across by -1, I will have x is less than -5. A second thing to be aware of is that I might sometimes be asked to graph the combination of two separate inequalities. So for example, if I have an inequality A, x is greater than 1, and an inequality B where x is less than or equal to 3, I'm told the type of number system x is a real number, and I'm asked to graph A intersection B. That means that I must follow the rules for the A statement and the B statement. So I must graph numbers that are bigger than 1 and less than or equal to 3. Here's my basic number line. I haven't marked anything yet. I want to mark values that are greater than 1 for real numbers, so greater than with real numbers means I must circle my first value. And I also want to mark my heavy line to the right, but I'll just hold off on that for 1 second. X is less than or equal to 3, so less than or equal to with real means I want to use a dot. And now I want to go up from 1 and down from 3, but I'm just going to keep it contained between those two values. And so my finished diagram looks like this. Note that in this scenario, I don't use any arrows. That's because I don't continue out beyond the boundaries of the number line that I've drawn.